We'll call this meeting to order, this meeting of the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission for December the 14th, 2023. Welcome, everyone, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. This is our modified Planning Commission schedule. We normally meet the fourth Thursday of every month, and there's always conflicts with Thanksgiving or Christmas and holidays in December, so we have this in-between meeting in the second week of December. So this meeting kind of covers both months for us. We'll start off with our roll call. Commissioner Allen. Present. Commissioner Franks. Present. Commissioner Harrison. Present. Commissioner Lindsay's present. Commissioner Mann. Here. Commissioner McLemore.
Present.
Commissioner Orr.
Present.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
And Commissioner Williamson.
Present.
Present. We're all present and accounted for. The next part of our meeting is for citizen comments. Consistent with recent changes to state law, this time is open for citizens to be heard on any issue or concern, even if you want to speak to an item on the agenda. We ask you to wait until the comment period for that specific item, and ask you also to fill out a speaker card if you want to speak to a specific item. You can fill out the card and give it to one of our staff members, and they'll hand it to me. So on the items not on the agenda, if anyone would like to speak to those items, you're welcome to come forward to the lectern and make your comments. Okay. Okay, so seeing none, we'll go next to our approval of these specific items, 10 and 14. Okay, we'll cover those when we get to that item on the agenda. Okay, so the next is for the approval of our minutes. This is for consideration of approval of the October 26th, 2023 Franklin Municipal Planning Commission minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Harrison and a second by Commissioner McLemore. Are there any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Franks.
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. Commissioner Mann.
Yes.
Commissioner McLemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Orr.
Aye.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Commissioner Williamson.
Aye.
That motion passes for the approval of the minutes. Announcements. Staff?
I don't have any announcements.
Okay.
But we just wish you all a happy holidays.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next item is the consideration of our consent agenda. Consideration of approval of items 2 through 9 and item 11 through 13 make up the consent agenda. And these are items, this is a single vote to consider approval of all of those items. They'll be addressed without any comment or any debate. So is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda, or is there a request to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Harrison. second by Commissioner Orr. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsey votes aye, Commissioner Mann,
Yes.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williamson.
Aye.
That motion passes for approval of the consent agenda. The next item is item number 10. Item number 10 is the consideration of Resolution 2023-74, a resolution to adopt an Envision Franklin Plan amendment to establish a special consideration for properties located on the east side of Columbia Avenue between 9th Avenue and Blackburn Street for the neighborhood mixed-use design concept. We'll start with a staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application request is to add a new special consideration to the neighborhood mixed-use design concept called East Side of Columbia Avenue between 9th Avenue and Blackburn Street. The special consideration includes the 4 parcels along Columbia, starting with the Handy Hardware site and stretching to the Branch Building Group building. The property currently falls into the Columbia Avenue between 5 Points and Folk Street neighborhood mixed-use special consideration and the Columbia Avenue Overlay District. The applicant is requesting current special consideration, which allows a maximum height of 2 stories to be removed for these properties and replaced with the proposed language to only apply to the 4 parcels between 9th Avenue and Blackburn Street on the east side of Columbia Avenue. That new special consideration proposed language would read as follows. New development should be 2 stories in height along the street, but may be up to 3 1/2 story if the upper story and a half is recessed a minimum of 10 feet from the lower floors. Transition should be addressed between commercial buildings and their parking areas and adjacent residential uses. Historically significant buildings that contribute to the overall character of the corridor should be preserved, such as the Handy Hardware building. The applicant is also requesting the removal of Figure 4.3 conceptual plan Columbia Avenue between 5 Points and Folk Street, which shows which buildings should be preserved along Columbia Avenue. So since the adoption of Envision Franklin in 2017, there have not been major changes to the built environment along Columbia Ave. The corridor has seen some redevelopment in 2016, including the TMA building at 2 stories, the Synergy Bank building at 2 stories, and 3 stories on 9th Avenue, the police headquarters, 2 stories on Columbia with an exposed lower level on 9th Avenue, and the AutoZone building at 1 story. In 2016, the Columbia Avenue Overlay District was updated, and the height maximum was a point of discussion during the public process due to the low-scale nature of the corridor between 5 Points and Folks, including the historic Handy Hardware building, as well as the historic buildings and National Historic Landmark, the Carter House. The building height maximum was reduced to 2 stories with a provision for the largest parcel, the H.G. Hill property, that may have 3-story buildings internal to the site. Since the topography falls away from Columbia Avenue. With this application, the developer has acquired multiple adjoining small, shallow parcels along Columbia Avenue and seeks to take a master planned approach. The proposal is generally consistent with the intent of the plan, but staff has concerns about the building height exceeding 3 stories because it would be taller than the maximum height recommendation for the Main Street design concept, and because of the precedent it may set for the Columbia Avenue corridor with continued redevelopment pressures. The site design included in this application is conceptual and will be fully reviewed in future processes if this request is approved. At more than 3 stories, this development would be the tallest on Columbia Avenue, taller than the parapet of the police headquarters. And across 4 parcels could create an abrupt change in massing and scale, especially to those properties on Cummins Street. The staff believes that a building height of 2 stories with a recessed 3rd story is more appropriate due to the prevailing building heights of existing buildings, the low-scale residential character along Cummins, and the desired vision of the corridor based upon previous community outreach. There was a virtual neighborhood meeting on October 5th. This meeting was attended by nearby residents along Cummins Street who were mainly concerned with parking and extra traffic. So these 4 parcels have a depth of only about half of a typical standard block, meaning the development envelope and required parking will be more difficult to achieve. So the applicant is seeking to provide underground parking. The project also includes the historic Handy Hardware building, which will be preserved as part of the project. All other buildings are proposed to be demolished. The staff generally agrees that through careful architectural design, a recessed 3rd story could be appropriate. However, the staff has concerns about building heights exceeding 3 stories due to the existing low-scale nature of Columbia Avenue. The staff recognizes that the shallowness of the parcels combined with the city's parking requirements for their proposed uses makes it challenging to redevelop properties at this location. If the plan amendment is successful, the staff will initiate a zoning text amendment to the Columbia Avenue overlay related to building height. Staff recommends approval with condition of the 2 stories with a recessed 3rd.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll go to public comment. I've got a number of speaker cards. I'll name off, say, the first 4 and ask you to come and line up behind the lectern and be prepared to speak. We'll ask you to give us your name and address, and we'll ask you to hold your comments to 2 minutes, please. Starting with Barry Beasley, Julian Bibb, Bob Ravener, Jim Roberts.
Hello, Barry Beasley. I serve as the president and CEO of the Heritage Foundation. I live at 3043 Old Hillsborough Road. This past year, the Heritage Foundation of Williamson County eagerly participated alongside the community to speak into the updates for Envision Franklin. Through numerous workshops and intentional dialogue, the proposed updates to Envision Franklin could potentially safeguard and steward Franklin's historic character and world-class charm for the next several years. After engaging with city staff and reading the proposed draft, we sent a letter to the Planning Commission, which is also included in tonight's agenda packet, offering our perspective regarding several proposed updates that are of concern to us. Preservation is not only about our past, but it is also about our future. As a 56-year-old organization committed to preservation advocacy of our entire county, we want to fully collaborate and have open dialogue with our city officials, developers, and property owners. We also encourage the Planning Commission to adhere to the wishes of our community by preserving our historic places, green spaces, historic gateways, and heritage corridors to ensure vibrancy and viability for all who live here now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian Bibb.
I'm Julian Bibb. I live at 918 Fair Street. I am very excited about this project. I've stood here early on when we did the first streetscape, so I'm really old. I stood here when Ed Silva led us down the second phase of streetscape that was coming along Columbia Avenue. And I see this really as a 3rd phase of streetscape. I live downtown. My office is right across the street from Handy Hardware. And I am very excited about the saving of that building, which is iconic in Franklin. I have met with representatives of the development team, and I'm excited about the plans for underground parking and the retail restaurant concept that they are proposing with this project. I think that it will enhance, as most of you know, I've spent a lot of time on battlefield preservation along in the Columbia Avenue Carter House area. The Carter House is about to have a brand new visitor center that will come out of the ground, funded by the state of Tennessee. And all of these things tie together, as well as the pathway that we've worked on going along West Forks into Natchez. And you can just see the generation of tourism, historic preservation. There are 100,000 people that come here for our battlefield, and there are lots more that come here for other amenities and excitement of the city. And I see this project really tying into all those things that we're doing. And it will greatly enhance the tourist experience as well as the experience for those of us that live downtown. And I urge you to consider this favorably. Thank you.
Bob Revener.
Good evening. I'm Bob Ravener. I live at 221 3rd Avenue South. I've been a downtown resident for over 6 years, very involved, and not only a big preservationist, downtown resident, and want to continue to see the vibrancy of our downtown area continue. I think there are really 4 things that I'm looking for. The sustainability and the vibrancy of downtown, which we know requires people coming into town, not only tourists, but other residents. I think we've gone way too far in giving up too much of our residences to a combination of commercial, residential, and office space. A project like this seems to bring back what a downtown urban environment ought to be, which is mixed use, which includes additional residential. This is a building in Handy Hardware that does not require it to be preserved. Now, whatever decisions were made that missed that, I feel bad about, but for preservation, that's a very historic building that I think we need to preserve. And I also think it incorporates some smart growth. And so ultimately, and I've asked this question many times before in front of BOMA, is what do we want the Columbia Avenue downtown area to look like? And I think this area needs to be an extension of downtown, creating more walkability, creating more vibrancy as a link between downtown Main Street and up to Carter Hill and the preservation area there. It feels to me, and I've talked to the developers of this many times, it looks to me like they've bent over backwards to try to accommodate city concerns, city needs. And for what they're looking to do, feels like if we're going to have smart growth in our community, that this is the kind of developer we want to work with that will try to do what's best for what the city needs as well as what they need to actually turn a profit and do something that's smart and growth for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Jim Roberts.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jim Roberts. I live at 1327 Adams Street, where my wife and I have resided in that historic district since 1978. And tonight I'm asking for your approval of the applicant's request. This applicant has stated since it started that it wanted to preserve Handy Hardware. And why is that important? It's important because, as Mr. Radner just said, this area is not in any of the historic overlay. From 5 Points down to Folks, none of those properties are in the historic overlay. And it's unusual for a developer to come in this kind of a situation and ask that a building like this be rehabilitated rather than destroyed and then buildings being built around it. That's one thing. The overall height of the building is actually 1 foot less than the height of the police station across the street. So I think that's significant. And the height, no matter whether it's 3 or 3.5 stories, the overall height is the same. The added height will make and it's also with the setback of 10 feet. It is similar to other projects in the downtown area that have had that step back at that additional level. The streetscape enhancements along Cummins Street behind the project, the anticipated project, met with neighborhood enthusiasm. I watched the Zoom meeting and saw that. I did not know at the time that was part of the project, but it is. And I think those improvements will really enhance the walkability of the area, as well as the view shed along Cummins and for those residents that are on Cummins Street. Lastly, the designated parking will meet 100%, if not more, of the requirements of the city. So there's no request for any parking limitations. So overall, I believe this project is going to really enhance that section of Columbia Avenue, and I urge your approval of the applicant's request. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next up, Gail Haddock, Ken Moore, Jason Potts, and Margie Tyree. So Gail?
I'm Margie Tyree, and I live at 2211 Oak Branch Circle. I own property 600 Church Street, 601 Church Street, 417 Cummins. My concern, I like the idea of them keeping the Handy Hardware building, and I do know it's a Farnsworth building, which means everything. And my building at 601 Church Street happens to be a Farnsworth building. And I don't know if anybody knows that the Farnsworth was, if you got a Farnsworth building, you're pretty lucky. But anyway, I think it's a great idea. I like it, except I'm concerned about the underground parking, about if they have to do blasting. I'm worried about it'll be shaking the ground, and my building is very, very close to this. I don't want to see cracks in my building. My building is cement block, and the other one is brick. And I'm very concerned about that. And if you could figure out another way of doing parking, I'd be real happy about that. If you could build a parking garage, maybe give them a variance for their parking garage. I'd be happy with everything except the blasting of an underground parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Gail Haddock?
I'm Gail Haddock. I live at 213 Lewisburg Avenue. I'm also representing my mother, who owns the house at the corner of Church and Fifth Avenue South, 201 Fifth Avenue South. And I have about 4 different concerns with this project. One is the height that's proposed. To me, that impinges on the adjacent residential areas in a detrimental manner. I think that, I know we've talked before about how on the north side of Franklin, a lot of the houses have become commercial properties, and we're trying to protect the south side of Main Street from that. And this is, it's encroaching on that, to me, in a detrimental manner. I also think that the traffic congestion is atrocious on South Margin. I did go to the neighborhood meeting on October 5th, and they talked about a convoluted rerouting from South Margin over to Columbia, which to me is convoluted, and I have concerns about that. I also, I guess not in agreement with some, to me the battlefield reclamation areas around the Carter House, that is the Carter House and the whole historic area is the quiet, dignified area. And to me, allowing higher buildings, more commercial development, more people, more congestion, impinging on that is not smart, I don't think. We've sort of we are allowing that around the factory district. And I think keeping, greater congestion and entertainment on that side of town would be better than on the Columbia Avenue area. My other concern has to do with the underground parking and the water drainage issues in that area. I don't know if you all know, but there's significant flooding when Franklin floods of the houses along Fifth Avenue South. There are actually several ponds that form between Fifth Avenue South and Fourth Avenue South in heavy rains. And to me, excavating the earth, taking away some of the drainage area is a potential problem. I've actually been worried about the work that's being done on Adams Street. When those new pipes are put in, what's going to happen when all that water hits Fifth Avenue South and the flooding issues, which is really it's a Franklin City problem. Only the city of Franklin can solve that problem by redoing Church Street. So to me, that's another very significant issue for the property owners.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haddock. Ken Moore?
Excuse me, Ken Moore, soon to be 725 West Main Street. It was not meant to be a joke. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you tonight about the Margin District project before you tonight, and this is one of the most exciting developments in recent times in downtown Franklin, along with the coming of the Carter House and also preservation of the Handy Hardware. I'd like to offer you just a little bit of a background of that Columbia Avenue project or street, since I was first an alderman in '07 and since being mayor since 2011. One of the investments that the city made was a $36 million police station on Columbia Avenue with the thought that that would help stimulate additional growth and development on Columbia Avenue. To add to that is over a $20 million project called Streetscape on Columbia Avenue, with the goal of improving the appearance of Columbia Avenue, improving the infrastructure there, but the main object was economic development. Well, what's happened? Not much. We've had a little bit of development along Columbia Avenue, but nothing that rivals the potential impact of this project. Now, we have one large additional piece of property that's already been referred to, the Hill property, that we hopefully this would stimulate that particular project to develop also. Redevelopment of this area will preserve Handy Hardware and make significant improvements with a mixed-use development that will continue to expand the vitality of our downtown, attracting both locals and tourists. And also, as I mentioned, the Carter House Center has been fully funded and will add additional traffic there. I applaud the vision of this particular project and glad to support it.
Thank you. Jason Potts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Jason Potts. I live at 615 Watson Branch Drive. First, members of our Planning Commission, thank you for your service to our great city. I know that you spend a lot of countless hours that a lot of us don't see, and we appreciate that. I will be brief. I'm speaking tonight on the opportunity for Franklin to preserve the historic Handy Hardware building. I'm excited for this preservation opportunity. I think that it continues to be one of the cornerstones in our community, and I look forward to seeing your discussion tonight on this project and keeping preservation at the very top of your discussion. I want to thank you again for your continued leadership. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. And is there someone here representing the applicant?
You got that? We have a few exploded versions of things in your packet just to make it a little bit easier. So they'll do that while I'm over here. First of all, my name is Devin McClendon, and I'm the owner's representative for the project. Here tonight, we have our entire project team as it stands, both civil engineering and architecture, to answer any questions you guys may have relating to kind of some of the technical things. Before I start, let me say a big thank you to those that have engaged with us in the process. Had several questions, some phone calls. Response to our Zoom meeting was wonderful and pleasantly overwhelming, mostly because of the focus on the combination of what can we do that advances Columbia Avenue in combination with what could preserve Handy Hardware. I'm going to speak a little fast because we do have a little bit limited amount of time. We had a lot of speakers, so I want to be respectful of that. Our team is here to ask for the amendment of the Envision Franklin plan as a guiding document. We want to reassure you that we want to create a place with this project that embodies Envision Franklin's vision, major goals, and guiding principles. Would you go to 6? You got it? Sorry, yeah. Sorry, a little coordination. Specifically, we are only requesting edits that relate to the precise location of our parcels and potential project to east side of Columbia Avenue between 9th and Blackburn. we're asking for a change to the special considerations, limiting 2 stories along Columbia Avenue, but allowing 3 along Cummins. Our parcels fall between these 2 streets, and our request would allow a project that would contain 3.5 stories, but only be as tall as a 3-story building. I'll explain that. We will not be adding additional traffic to this project into the neighborhood due to the fact that we've really overcompensated for parking. That was made very, very clear to us as we met with interested parties before we even approached city staff. Rather, we see it as reducing traffic by having a residential 3rd story as opposed to a commercial 3rd story. By creating true mixed use, live, work, play, you actually reduce traffic. Further, we believe we'll capture all this parking on site, as I mentioned. If you go to 5. Currently, 3 stories is allowed for buildings facing Cummins Street. We wanted to create more of a buffer than a flat 3-story building by stepping back, but allowing that 3rd story facing both streets, but stepping it in, not only to give the appearance, but also to create more view shed. To accomplish our goals that we've shared with you during the joint conceptual meeting back in October, we needed to create livable space on the 3rd story. It allows us to take what is allowed for a single story and divide it to get additional square footage. That square footage is critical to our project, not just to make it work, but in order to be able to save and afford the expense of saving Handy Hardware. From the outside, the height of the building will not change between a 3 or a 3.5 story structure. The half story is a technical term that allows us to build an interior story within the limitation of 3. We originally came up with the idea that 3.5 stories wording or phrasing 3.5 was provided to us by staff if we wanted to be able to accomplish our goal of this internal division. Our request is technical, as I've mentioned. It gives us some clarity that staff said we needed. I repeat, our 3-story building would be the exact same height as our 3.5 story building. It'll simply allow us to build as I've described. Think of this space as a man cave, a wine room, a guest bedroom, a home office, a study, things that you find in high-end construction. Yep. Okay, allow me to address the why. So when we began our study of what fit within the existing goals of Envision Franklin as it is, specifically goals for this area, we decided that a true mixed-use project was called for, and to accomplish it, we felt it was important to create a buffer, specifically for the residents on the other side of Cummins and into Evans Street. As a goal, also as a goal of the city and the community at large, one of our top priorities became find a way to preserve Handy Hardware. We've spent 3 years trying to figure this puzzle out. That's where we are today. Since Handy is 2 stories and a fairly inefficient building, if you ever had the opportunity to go up onto the 2nd floor, very few people were. Combined with the fact that we'll need to work around it, the amount of square footage we need is incorporated into that half floor. Without the allowance of that additional square footage, we do not have the resources to be able to preserve Handy Hardware. For us, it became this decision of, we get about 30% more square footage if we raise it and build it up to a 3 with a step back. So we have to allocate some of that lost square footage. That's that tiny little bit within that 3-story guidance that we're calling 3.5. We do acknowledge staff has concerns. We've spoken with them several times about them. Those are outlined in their comments in sections 2 and 3. Our request is as specific as we can get to our project. the changes we made, we ran by staff, we checked with them as best we could, and we understand their concerns. But if our goal is to save the historic building, this is the only way we've been able to solve that puzzle. Within this, you have two new buildings in this block, or in these few blocks, one being AutoZone, one being the bank. These are setting the standard of what's possible within the existing. If that's what we want, then that's what this corridor will have. We respectfully feel that our current our special consideration area we're asking for creates consistency. It allows for consistency as you go down Columbia Avenue from 5 Points. The existing plan does not really allow for that. And I'll give you a quick example. If you were to take Handy Hardware and you were to peel the barn off the back, the site does not park under current regulations, and you would not be allowed to pull the barn off because you're required under the current plan to put retail along 100% of the front. So if you want to save Handy Hardware and you want to actually do something with it that's viable, you got to pull the barn off the back. You have to pull the addition off and preserve the original building. The site doesn't park by current regulation, and you would have to build retail along the front of Columbia Avenue. That loses more parking spaces and creates more parking demand. Let's see, additional, go to 8, if you don't mind. Staff did express some additional concerns that we think we've addressed about height. That's been mentioned. We don't believe this really applies to our project, but we can agree to disagree on some of these. Allow me to explain. We had a surveyor measure existing buildings in the area. The very top, not the parapet, but the actual very top constructed point of the police station sits at 702.84 feet above sea level, 702. Our proposed would be at 701.9. The very top of our tallest building would still sit below the very top constructed part of the police station. We would have multiple buildings within it. One would actually sit lower than that. And then Handy obviously being the lowest point within that. If you'd go for total height of construction, the police headquarters sits at 53.36 feet, and our buildings would sit at 52.4 and 50 feet even. Now, we don't have constructed buildings, so that is relative, but it's meant to give you an idea that we're not talking about towering over anything. We're talking about whether you talk total height, ground to ceiling, or sea level, we remain shorter than the tallest building on the block. Finally, I'll kind of wrap up and say that the Handy Hardware building is identified by many as the historic jewel of the area. Its preservation has been highlighted as a priority. We added that priority to our requested text amendment, or to our Envision Franklin amendment. We voluntarily added that in there. That note should be used throughout the entire Columbia Avenue area. As a single-use structure, Handy Hardware cannot be preserved and comply with current zoning. I've mentioned that earlier. The only way to protect and preserve it is to incorporate it within a larger development that then allows for those modern requirements of parking, stormwater management, and utilities. Our team has worked 3 years, I did mention that, to try to bring a project in front of you and in front of BOMA and the citizens of Franklin, of which the entire city can be proud. We hope we've done that. We've done it in cooperation with countless individuals, and we welcome your questions.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
You have a motion to approve
Second.
by Commissioner Franks. Was that Alma? Okay. second by Commissioner McLemore. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to say, I know this came into the workshop and I saw that 3.5, and I've seen quite a few projects that in some ways can really exploit that to where it looks like a 4th level. And kind of seeing some of the exhibits you brought and you've submitted with your application, especially the slide number 8, showing those sections, I think that that is quite a good architectural solution to what you're trying to achieve. Because my biggest concern was that, yeah, we don't want to have structures on Columbia that look like they're 4 stories, because it doesn't, there were some citizen comments said about, extending that downtown character, kind of bringing that out a lot, and downtown is 3 stories. So I think it's a very good architectural solution.
So I have a
Yes.
question, actually it's two-pronged. So we have a motion on the floor to approve. Now, staff recommended gave us a recommendation that had a condition. We have from here that we're discussing, they have 3 things that they agreed on from staff, but it says different. Staff recommended 3 feet, and we have here.
3 stories.
3 stories, I'm sorry. But we have here what's being presented to us, 3.5 stories. So we're discussing the staff's recommendation? That's what we're discussing, correct?
We're discussing the applicant's submittal.
The applicant's proposal.
That wasn't made clear. I just want to be sure that we all know what we're talking about here, because that's not what was presented to us. I just want to make sure. Well, anyway, so now let me go to my question, because we'll have to do, you guys will have to do that. That's not my motion. But to staff, so here, the applicant has agreed with everything you've said, except for that one thing, which they're saying, it's 3.5 stories, which it's a recess, and you say it doesn't make a difference really in the height. So my question to you is, did they come up with this later? Is that something that staff can agree with in your condition? Does that make sense?
The materials that were submitted to us during the initial and resubmittal, we didn't have the level of detail that was mentioned tonight with the amount of actual height.
Okay.
And that I don't recall from the submittal materials that there was information about the 3.5 stories being the exact same height as the 3 stories. I can't say whether that would have changed our recommendation. We did a lot of our basis off of the height comparison to the police headquarters. Because if you look there, the 3rd level and the loft level looks similar. And it almost to us read as a 4th story when we looked at that.
Gotcha.
And so that's where we got our information and our analysis from. But this information was not considered as part of our staff recommendation.
So the reason I ask that is because I generally will always go with what staff says, okay? I want you to know that. I love this project, though, but as presented, and I want staff to know, I will be able to vote for that. But I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with what we're voting on and what we're saying. But yeah, so I can support that. I just want to make sure that staff was aware of that. So thank you for that clarification. All right.
Okay. Commissioner Harrison?
Looking at this, if the building height has not changed, it's still 3 stories. Y'all are adding an internal feature, the way I look at it, which is a loft or a mezzanine. It's not a true building story within the structure.
Right.
Because it doesn't encapsulate the full floor and be open, and you're not changing the height of the building. So I would agree, this is a 3-story building.
Right.
That's what it is.
I can certainly comment to that. From the overall height, we're working within the height that would be allowed. We would like to divide it internally. When we approached staff with that idea, they researched it like a lot and came back to us and said, okay, I think they kind of admitted to us, we're struggling a little bit in trying to solve the Rubik's Cube with you, and said the only way we can get you to where you think you need to be, or they're not getting us, but the only thing we think you can ask for that gets you where you need to be is to call it the half story.
Okay.
That's
So-
correct. The zoning ordinance does define half stories, and a loft or a mezzanine is defined as a half story. So if the intent is to build a half story on the 3rd floor, then we need to have the language reflect 3.5 stories.
Even if that is internal to the overall structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was their wording, and they were very kind to kind of hear our, this is what we want to accomplish, and then give us the wording we would need to propose to resolve that.
And there's code implications to that the half-story, as Devin described in the square footage, is still important to the project, which is why we can say height 3-story from the outside, but from the inside, that half-story is still
Gotcha.
important. And so that's why we have left that in our request.
Okay, thank you very
So
much.
is there then an expectation that third and a half story is within a single unit?
Yes.
Like a townhouse that has an upstairs to a loft? There wouldn't be a separate entrance, a separate
No,
facility?
in fact, I can only speak to our project for that. Staff might be able to address it in a universal language, for the rest of the block, right? I mean, it's essentially, we're talking Columbia Avenue from Church Street to Folks. So in our project, you would have the way we think we've got it engineered is you would have a central core elevator that gets you to the 3rd floor, and then access to that would be internal stairway, or in a handicap situation, a lift or rail guide. So it would not be a separate core. It would not be a 4-stop elevator above grade.
Yeah, no entry or egress to a 4th-story entrance.
Right.
So
Okay.
these pictures illustrate how that loft space works within the volume of a 3-story.
A single unit,
Yes,
but,
sir.
Right.
okay.
So
and
each unit would have its own access to its loft, but nobody else would have.
Right.
would have.
Right.
And then to your point about this only applies to your project, there are 2 other parcels, one on each end of this that you control ownership of, or the owner?
Our owners have purchased the parcel where Bobby's Automotive operates. We are likely to use that for staging for construction, but Bobby's had expressed a desire to continue working for a while longer, so we're as a promise to the people that sold it to us, we're working with him.
Right. So one of your exhibits, though, showed dotted lines around these parcels, and it looked to me like the buildings in this project were in the middle section with one on each end.
I can name the parcels for you just anecdotally by common words.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, so it's Handy Hardware, right? It's the old Auto Doctor. That's the salmon-colored cinder block building. It's the old catalytic converter building next to it. And then it's the old, it had about 3 or 4 tenants in it. The barreled roof building, and then the lot behind the catalytic converter, which was a separate parcel. So all in, this project only encompasses those. The impacted area is a little larger. So it does go up to Church Street there, as you can see on the top of that.
And then it comes down as well, does it not?
It does. The bank, but nobody's going to do
Oh, the
anything
bank
with
is
the bank.
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
We reached out to the bank at one point, and they said, "You have no idea how much money we put into this. We're not going anywhere." Not for a very long time.
Commissioner Orr?
So clarification on that extra half story there.
Right.
Is any external windows on that, or is it all internal to the structure? And from the outside appearance, it's just going to look like 2 stories and a recessed 3rd?
I don't know that we have that programmed yet. I mean, you want windows in it, but how you design the windows so that they look to see that, you're going to need to be about a block and a half off Columbia Avenue. On Columbia Avenue, you might see the very tip of the building because of the step back. That was something that staff, again, encouraged us. If you're going to do this, at least step it back, right? Bring it off so that your visual, and there should be a picture somewhere. Go to the last one. That gives you a little bit of an idea. So this is standing in front of First Bank, right? Across from Handy Hardware, looking upwards at the project. So if you look across where margin would be at the new construction, you see how it steps back. So to the extent that you're going to see if there are 2 sets of windows, that you would see the bottom one, you won't. You'll see the top.
the expression wouldn't be 2 stories of windows from
Right.
the outside. It might be a transom and a taller window for a loft
Yeah.
space.
Okay.
I think these images show some larger windows so that you do get a lot of daylight and the view of downtown, but not, the expression would not be 2 stories. It could be, the concept renderings are just what they might look like. We needed to get through this process before we could really start designing.
Right.
So there's a lot of design room to still explore, but there could be some roof expressions as well with dormers, or it could be taller walls.
Just whenever you're looking at that, don't set it up to where it looks like it's 4 stories.
No.
That was my point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just be careful in the architectural demonstration.
That's not the, because I don't think it would look right from the inside either.
This is, obviously, this is a request on Envision Franklin. We'll be back in front of you with a, with a project plan.
Right.
So sometime in the spring, hopefully. We'll see.
Okay,
And-
Commissioner Hart.
On that note with the timing, there will have to be a text amendment to the zoning ordinance that follows this before they come through with the project. So we're already preparing that, should this be approved. So that will come before you at the January joint workshop if this gets approved.
Just a question for staff on the closing of South Margin and extending Ninth over. Can you walk us through how that helps or hurts traffic?
We don't know at this point. We've had one scoping meeting on traffic study, and we've discussed this. At this point, we don't know whether we're going to integrate that into this model for this project, or is that something the city would take on? So we don't have that answer tonight. Once the development plan, if that moves forward, we would certainly have that addressed at the joint conceptual workshop as the guidance we've been given to have that traffic study completed at that time. So at that discussion for the development plan, we would have those answers for you.
Any other comments, questions?
My only comment is I think we've spent a lot of time focusing on the police headquarters and how this is slightly smaller. I do want to just point out that it is slightly, maybe minuscule, I can't tell because there's no numbers provided, than
About
the
a
First
foot.
Bank building. And so, which most of this is going to be centered in front of that building. And so, I think I'm so comfortable with it, but that was more calling out. I think somebody raised flooding concerns for the underground parking. Sounds like that'll be addressed during the development plan stage. So that's something I would like to make sure we know enough about in that stage.
And also, one of the citizens had some concern about blasting and things like that, so you all will address those issues at the time that you bring
Yeah,
them.
the approach we've taken so far has really been kind of community-led, not led, maybe that's the wrong word, community-driven. We heard some comments on our Zoom, our community Zoom to the impacted residents. Overwhelmingly, they're concerned about the period of construction. We did have a question about blasting. We're probably open to a hybrid solution or some mixed solution. There's 2 types of doing that. One is hoe ramming, which is the
I have no idea.
8 hours a day for so many weeks or months. One is a concentrated boom and then a lot of clearing. So staff has kind of told us there's an enormous amount of consideration we're all going to have to make on how we dig if we dig. We're certainly prepared for that. The last thing we want to do is to be a bad neighbor.
And I add to that, the state fire marshal permits all of that work, and there are pre-blasting surveys that are required. But the permitting process it starts and ends at the state level, but certainly something we'll consider.
Okay. How many layers deep is the subgrade parking?
We either 2 or 3. We made a commitment to a lot of the interested neighbors to, at a bare minimum, meet 100% of the parking and not seek a variance. We got a lot of encouragement to go further. I think the more that we can build reasonably and not become a hindrance, the better it is for future development in that area. It would be, it would be parking that is available. And if we build more than we're required, that's spaces we could loan to a project or whatever.
Right. I think it's important, I think from our perspective, we've just come off the consideration of a large project up by the factory. And from the way I look at projects like this is the massing and the density associated with the project. Does it fit within the neighborhood, within the confines of the proposed site? And that's awfully important in this case. We appreciate that you have indicated your willingness to preserve Handy Hardware. And as the mayor mentioned in his statements, it's important to create a development as we work our way south down Columbia Avenue, that we're creating desirable places to live and shop and conduct business. And so it's just kind of an admonishment, I guess, that we want to be careful that we don't stick something into a small spot that's perceived after the fact as being wholly too much for it. So, and to the point that was raised a minute ago about the drainage, there is some drainage behind some of those houses back over there, and I've been involved with a structure in downtown Nashville that routinely roped off their fourth level downstairs because they routinely had cars flood in that lowest level. And so just be alert to what you may need to do to protect from the drainage that comes down through that area. So, okay. Seeing no other comments, we have a motion for approval based on the applicant's submittal. And so, no further discussion or comments. All in favor? Wait a minute. Roll call, Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Franks.
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsey votes aye. Commissioner Mann.
Yes.
Commissioner McLemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Orr.
Aye.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Commissioner Williamson.
Aye.
That motion passes. So thank you very much. Next item is item number 14. The Solagi subdivision preliminary plat, creating 12 residential lots and 5 open space lots on approximately 4.54 acres located along Liberty Pike, west of Mac Hatcher Memorial Parkway. We'll start with staff. Okay, Amy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you said in the title, this preliminary plat proposes 12 residential lots, 5 open space lots, and proposes the dedication of right-of-way to have the street come into the site. The 12 residential lots include 4 multiplex lots and 8 duplex lots. The property is zoned MR, mixed residential, and each proposed lot meets the lot standards for the MR district. The preliminary plat, along with the attached conditions of approval, meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations. A copy of the preliminary plat is attached, as is the conditions of approval, and therefore staff recommends approval with conditions of this preliminary plat. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll go to public comment at this point. I've got, I think, one speaker card, John Power. Thank you. Okay,
John Power, 1289 Buckingham Circle, and I'm speaking today to voice my concern in opposition to the development. I am not opposed to it economically, but I think although it would be beneficial economically, I think it would be better suited elsewhere because it's on a 4.5 acre plot of land around a residential area. And the fact is that if you have 96 parking spaces and multiple buildings, that you have to deal with all the utility issues. So if built, I'm concerned that it could cause a devaluation of property as well as multiple utility issues. And that I think there's better areas around our city and community that we could better build this development and in order to further growth for the community. But I think that building on such a small area would be negative. And also in the past that it's been proposed to be developed before, but each time has been rejected, I think, is an issue that reflects how that the area is better suited as a non-residential area. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Millicent Branch.
Hi, I'm Millicent Branch, and I live in the Buckingham complex as well, 1288, right along the edge of the proposed development. My first time coming to one of these meetings, so I may not have everything, right, but I am concerned. There's a lot of kids in our neighborhood. We have the buses going through, having that much extra homes and possible traffic. There's Liberty School is right on that road as well. And I feel like there's possibly problems with drainage. There's a lot of clay in that soil there, and I don't know if they've taken that into consideration. Also, I'm not sure. There was a handout in there where they showed a lot of trees. I'm not really sure if these were trees that they're keeping or trees that they were removing. But there are a lot of wildlife as well that come through that area. I've had a number of deers, raccoons, I don't know, wolf, cougar, a lot of different animals go through that specific area that's been there over 100 years. And I don't know what what would happen with that as well. I know that's not as big as some of the other concerns, but I am concerned about that. So I'm concerned about the trees, how many of those they're going to take down, how that affect the wildlife, the drainage of the area, safety for all the people that are in our subdivision, and also the traffic going along Liberty Pike. It's already gets pretty congested on when they have activities at the factory and so forth. Having that many, 96, I believe, parking places, it just is the big upgrade from the current state, which is a farm. I'm not saying you can't do anything. I'm just saying that it doesn't seem like it's consistent with the area as it is now, that it would cause a lot of problems, and I just wanted to voice my concerns about it.
Okay, we appreciate it. Thank you. Tim Gill?
Good evening. My name is Timothy Gill. I live at 1292 Buckingham Circle, and I've lived there. Next August will be 30 years. So this is the third time I've been to one of these meetings, each concerning this property. First time, Mr. Salagio, which I'm sorry to hear that he passed away, always a good guy, very friendly, except when he tried to cut down my trees. And the second time was when it was changed to the mixed residential. And at that meeting, as I understood it, as I remember it, the reason it was switched to mixed residential, and I think this is in the Envision Franklin plan, that this is for to make sure that, well, let's see, I've got it. This is from the Envision Franklin. Building housing choices. Franklin serves as a regional employment hub which supports a robust economy. However, the majority of the community workforce lives outside the city and contributes to heavy commuter traffic. Offering a greater variety of housing options and price points make sure that Franklin's workforce is also able to live in the city. And that's how I understood when it was chosen mixed residential, that was one of the purposes of this. Because it not only changes the south side of Liberty, but the north side of Liberty too. So when we first got I first looked at the application, it didn't really specify, and maybe this comes farther along in the process, I don't know, what kind of houses are these going to be? I got a email from my alderman, Mr. Paget, today that said, because I had contacted him, and he said, well, these are going to be houses that will fit in with Buckingham Park, 2-story, one-family houses. Well, that doesn't seem to be what was intended for this property or any of those properties along Liberty Pike between Macatcher and Ralston. I'm a little concerned, as Millicent said, about the stormwater. I went through, I know your staff is, the first item on there where they have problems is adequate downstream storm infrastructure on outfalls and offsite prices. Well, as I said, I've worked there 30 years and nothing but water comes down off that hill. And I'm just concerned about, it's in the southeast corner. There's a retention pond and a detention pond in the southeast corner of this property that right up against Buckingham Parks. And I mean, we've got all sorts of little kids going to Franklin Elementary School, and I'm just worried about, the safety of those children. The tree canopy is another thing. When Mr. Szilagyi bought the back half of that property, he only owned the front half to the front of that property. And then the gentleman next door at 812 owned, it was kind of an L-shaped lot, and he had a little farm back there when we first moved in. But then Mr. Szilagyi bought that, and as soon as he bought it, he started cutting down trees. For instance, I look out my back window. Back then, I could not see Liberty Pike. I could not see cars on Liberty Pike. Now I can. Also, and if you look at the plot between, next to the church and all the way down to Ralston, it's the only clear lot there. Everything else is got a tree canopy. Just doesn't seem quite fair that those areas headed west from where the property is, they're not going to have any multi-use residentials unless it's down like they're building one at the corner of, 2 doors down from Ralston and Liberty. Great big building, and it's fine. I'm all for, I'm not against them building multi-residential. I understand the need, as it says in the Envision Franklin, that you need to be able to have people have housing at price points they can afford.
Okay, we appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Is there someone here representing the applicant?
Good evening. Name is Christopher Wood with Kaiser Vogler Design. We're a landscape architect and land planning firm. I'm here to represent the applicant and property owner. We have the development team and engineering team here to answer any questions that you may have. We have reviewed the City of Franklin staff's conditions of approval. We take no exception to anything that they have presented and asked for us. So we respectfully ask that this project be approved, allowed to move forward into the next phase of site planning. And we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
You have a motion to approve by Commissioner Franks, a second by Commissioner Harrison. Is this approval with staff conditions?
Correct.
Approval with staff conditions.
My second was yes.
Okay. Any discussion? Questions for the applicant?
I have questions for staff. So maybe, I've been looking and looking and looking, so I need some help here. Okay, 8 duplexes, correct? Is that, okay, so that's 16. 4 multiplexes, somebody help me here.
4.
4, okay, but multiplexes, multi means more than one. How many? How many units is that? Can somebody help me here?
There's 4 units per multiplex.
Okay, so that's it, so another 16.
So there's a total of 32 dwelling units.
Okay, so now, thank you. So now, that's a lot. So we got 4 acres on Liberty Pike near Maghatcher. That's a lot for me. Too much for me. Let me quit being vague. I'm really concerned here on this, where this is. I'm out there all the time. So, and I read through the conditions, quite a few of them. I think that has probably a lot to do with, well, anyway, I'm not with this. That's a lot. Staff had no concerns. I know, and generally I go along with that. Not the spot for it for me. I'll just stop. I don't have to go any more details. Well, you say be clear. Our legal always says, if you're not supportive, say why. That's why. Too much, not the spot. Can't support it.
Thank you.
I share in the concern, but my question may be for staff. Is my concern at the right stage? You know, the site plan approval stage, is that, so the subdivision, if you're going to put 12 single-family lots there, I don't have any concern. I do think, I have concern with the number of dwelling units, and maybe without a traffic study, maybe understanding why this didn't trigger a traffic study.
Well, in terms of traffic study, he can answer that. I can't answer the amount of lots and the location of them do meet the requirements of the base zoning district.
Yeah.
They're putting the duplexes along the border where they are adjacent to single-family homes, which is what the zoning ordinance says.
Okay.
And the multiplexes are interior to the design or along Liberty Pike where there are no residential single-family next to them. So staff is we are
Yeah,
bound
I
by
understand.
those base districts
Understand.
and that they're meeting those requirements.
Okay, so that's helpful. So I think if I'm comfortable with the subdivision, then I have to be comfortable inherently with the buildings. But I do wonder about the traffic study, because these aren't single-family residential. This is 32 living units. How did you get comfortable with the traffic?
We didn't hit the triggers for our standards on the traffic study, which is 100 peak hour trips or 1,000 daily trips. So we didn't hit those triggers. And given the access to Maghatcher right near there, there was no real need to have a study in this area. We'll have more dense development forthcoming, things at the factory where we'll study this corridor again and again. But they did not hit the triggers for our standard traffic study requirements.
Okay.
And see, if I might go back to that, and I understand that, but when you add that in with what's already there, there's already a lot of traffic there. And I know for you guys not, but people that are living, just go out to Maghatcher's any day and drive Maghatcher. Okay, there's already a lot. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot to you, but to add to what's already existing there, there's already a lot of traffic there. And I'll just hush, but anyway.
Well, I live on the next street, so I know. Don't know, so I'm good.
All right. Can we answer anything about the traffic? Are we able to weigh in?
Sure, I'd like to.
Can I ask, I
Go
know, does it have to come, excuse me. Does it have to come, will it come back to us?
For the site plan?
Uh-huh.
No, it will not.
It won't, that's what I was
That's
thinking.
my understanding, no.
Well, I still want to ask this question. Do you have any idea what the price points would be for these duplexes and multi? Because we were talking about housing at our joint conceptual meeting, and that's a concern. I mean, we're continuing to add more and more to the roads, the traffic, and we're not getting any affordability factors in there. So that's my question. And you may not be able to answer me right now, but I'm asking anyway.
All right, I don't know. Do you have any?
Hi, I think with regard, my name's Adam Balish. This is not a Boyle Investment Company project, but I'm assisting a friend that is the applicant on this. The project itself mimics some duplexes that were built on Fairground Street, thank you, Amy, that were sold in the high fives to sixes. Which I believe is in keeping kind of with the, the workforce housing price points of, kind of the 120 to 150% of the median household income of this area. There was a preliminary traffic study that was turned in to staff, although it was not required, as Jimmy suggested. We went ahead and initiated one. We thought it'd be worthwhile for discussion with the engineering department and the traffic department. And at peak hour, we were adding 12 cars a day to Liberty Pike. The report suggested that there needed to be an additional 1,200 cars a day before any improvements were made to that intersection. And at peak hour, I believe the turning suggestions at that intersection where we were adding approximately 5 cars per peak hour to the Liberty Pike and Mac Hatcher intersection. So relatively speaking, although this is a busy area, this is adding a pretty nominal amount of additional traffic to that. Ms. McLemore, I think the builders associated with this share your concerns with where pricing is going in Franklin, and really applaud staff and everybody else that has elected to push the mixed residential zoning that is suggested in Envision Franklin and exists throughout town in a couple of areas. And I think, the design staff and others have worked really hard to comply with that in hopes of promoting that zoning district that's out there. And so far, there's not been a huge amount built in those areas, so.
Thank you for answering that question.
Yeah, thanks for that context. That was very helpful, particularly with the traffic study that you guys
So
did.
are these all units for sale, 32 units for sale?
Yes, sir.
There's no rental associated with this?
$600,000.
Because it seems to me that, you heard my statements in the last case, there's a great danger of trying to jam too much on a small site. And this one just kind of screams that to me. I don't know how you get that many units on a site like that. It'll be interesting to see the site plan when it comes in. Because,
We're not gonna see it.
That's how they're getting.
well, I know.
No, we won't be able to
I know,
see
but
it.
still,
We won't
it's,
see it.
I know. I'm just
We'll see final.
massing and density. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I think density is a little concern on this, but also then for the record for legal, I know my maiden name was Salaji. I don't bear a resemblance to this family, so just that out there. We're not related.
Thank you, Jennifer.
That's her cousin.
Okay, we have a proper motion for approval with staff conditions, made by Commissioner Franks, and seconded by Commissioner Harrison. Commissioner Allen,
No.
Commissioner Franks,
Yes, Frank's, F-R-A-N-K.
Commissioner Harrison. Aye. Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. Commissioner Mann,
Yes.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williamson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business before the commission tonight? Seeing none, is there a motion
So moved.
to adjourn?
Second.
Commissioner Allen votes for motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
And Commissioner Harrison seconds that motion. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks? Commissioner Harrison? Commissioner Lindsey votes aye. Commissioner Mann?
Yes.
Commissioner McLemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Orr?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williamson?
Aye.
We are adjourned.